This conference will now be recorded.
Yes. So with the question,
I guess it wasn't invited to the meeting.
I was wondering where you were.
Was this more of the technical?
It's more of an update about where the project is. Okay. So I did with the contract, maybe done, but they were trying to get an idea of what you, MOU and the contract. Franchise, yes. I thought this week something-
Dusty,
What's
that's your
that?
summer cut?
Yeah,
Contract meeting, is that-
I
Did they
think
say
so.
anything about an
No,
A bass and a shape,
they just
stood or just fine?
I'm so confused. I don't know what it was, so,
They didn't say anything about it.
no.
Because that's what they talked about, the IRU, which is
Yeah.
what we want, and all of a sudden we get a MOU.
Yeah.
Well, that's,
Supposedly they're, I think.
When is
MOU
it?
They want to talk about.
Yeah, they want to
Well, make sure we get all our switches paid for.
I don't know what, that's part of the place, just get all the equipment, I didn't understand that.
Right.
Zach, are you gonna be able to put everybody's picture up there?
Trying to, and my might still be away, but for now I can figure out how to get for this screen and carry the main display. But he wasn't on it,
Okay. And March 22nd, 2021, City Council be called to order. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on the agenda will be approval.
I would just say, before we start, I think we should probably do roll calls. and
Okay,
then we
yeah.
have
Sorry,
mixed-
go ahead, Zach,
municipalities.
do the roll call.
Councilmember Adam,
Here?
Councilmember Kagar,
here,
Councilmember Watt,
Here,
Councilmember Shriver,
here,
and Councilmember Stipe.
here.
Okay,
Thank you.
now we're ready to
We have
move
a
on to
quorum.
the
Yes,
first
sir.
item on the agenda will be approval of the consent agenda, which is the minutes and the statement of the bills.
I move to approve the consent agenda with one amendment to the minutes, and that's on page 3, bullet point 4, and that's when it was discussing stressing the belief of constant supervision by participation by police or CSO staff, not and CSO staff.
Got it.
Okay, we have that.
There's a
Second.
motion. Okay, a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with a change in the minutes. Would the clerk please call roll?
Driver?
Was that me?
Yes. Driver?
You sound like you're way far away in a tunnel. Yes.
He's gonna grab the mic up here.
Stites,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Cahar,
Yes.
Malott.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda will be requests or comments from the public. Zach, do we have any?
None that were submitted to my office.
Okay. Very good. We'll move on to item number 3 on the agenda would be consider recommendation of approval from the Cemetery, Parks and Public Spaces Board to authorize city manager to enter a contract with Supreme Green Landworks for mowing services at Edwardsville Cemetery.
Mr. Mayor, what's in front of you is what the last 3 years has been a renewal of the contract for cemetery mowing. If you'll remember, we approved White Lawn and Landscape for a 1-year deal that was renewable up to 3 years. So they reached that 3-year limit this year. As such, we needed to go back out for competitive bids. The results of the bids are summarized in the table in the memo. Technically, the low bid was from a group called WCO Enterprises. They're actually a group based out of Texas and Arizona. And when I was able to reach out to them and talk with them, they let me know that they would actually be subcontracting that work, and they don't technically have a local subcontractor identified. So that, after consideration of that fact, the CPBS board made the recommendation to move forward with Supreme Green Landworks. They're out of Bonner Springs. They've done cemeteries in the area at Bonner Springs and in KCK. Did a reference check of them, and they come very highly regarded. So that would be the recommendation from the CPPS board to enter into a 1-year agreement with Supreme Green Landworks. Same deal as before, it's renewable up to 3 years, but it would be before this body, the CPPS board, and then this body each year for renewal period. I will note that the cemetery mowing cost, the annual cost, is based on an estimate of 19 mows. That tends to be the average that we do over in that site. The Supreme Green Landworks, they put down 0 for the wooded area of the cemetery, so that's the southernmost portion of it. They agreed that they would do that upon request. Our ground staff at the Parks Department is actually the one who is primarily keeping up with that area. The idea being that they would be the primary staff person assigned to that area, but if for whatever reason they can't get to it, then Supreme Green Landworks will just add it on whenever they're out there at no additional charge. Similar to the City Hall site, right now the intention is that our grounds position at a Parks will take care of the new area where we demolished the storefront up there. But again, if we ask for a unit price in case we needed to rely on contracted work, depending on availability of staff during sports seasons or other kind of activities. So with that, the recommendation would be for City Council to approve the CPPS board recommendation to move forward with Supreme Green Landworks for this contract.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we accept the contract from, just turned it over, from Supreme Green Landworks to mow the cemetery and other work as needed.
Second.
It has been moved and second to approve the authorization of the cemetery mowing to Supreme Green Landworks. And there's a motion and a second. So would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Cahar.
Yes.
And Malott.
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a question right quick if it's okay?
Okay, go ahead.
Hey, Zach, on my screen, and I know that generally it shows the agenda and everything on our screens as we go through this, and all I am seeing is just the photos of folks. And I'm sorry to have to say that during, but I'm not
Once
seeing.
I sit down, I'll change those
Okay.
settings,
All right.
and that way you'll just share the screen with everybody else.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry.
Okay, next item on the agenda, we'll consider ordinance number 1040, adopting contractor licensing.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. This is an item that came forth through the Planning Commission, though it's been an item kind of on our to-do list for some time. This relates to contractor licensing. By that, what we mean is when a contractor comes to pull a building permit, in most communities, they have to be a licensed contractor showing that they have met certain requirements to do the work. So plumbers take a test on plumbing, electricians on electrical. We are one of the few cities that does not have a form of contractor licensing in place. What this ordinance would do would be to establish that contractor license and to utilize the Johnson County Contractor Licensing Program. It was originally formed by the county back in Johnson County in 2001. Initially, it was really just for the county itself because both cities and counties have statutory authority to do this. It basically grew into a county-wide situation, so all of the local communities use their licensing program. It then expanded further and now is a program that's used in multiple counties in this region with contractors licensed from literally throughout the United States. Many of the contractors that do work here today have contractor licenses, but we have never required it. There is no cost to the city to use this program. We're basically using their licensing program. So a contractor would come in, they would show us their license if they have it. We'd check to make sure it's valid. We would go on with issuing a building permit. If they are a business, they still have to have a business license, as they already have to do. This just verifies the contractor licensing part of it. I think the rest of it I've put into the agenda. Happy to answer questions, but it has broad support from throughout the region. I would like to take a moment and recognize Mark Bishop, who's the chair of the Planning Commission, and he would like in that capacity to also say a few words on this. And as you know, he is a general contractor himself, and so very familiar with the program, and hopefully could answer other questions that you may have. So if Mr. Bishop could step up, we would appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. I'm Mark Bishop. I live at 11224 Kansas Avenue. And thank you for having me tonight. I brought this up before the planning committee. It's been several months, but with the whole COVID thing and everything, but I have to use this in my business. What this does is you have to have a minimum amount of insurance. You can't, and then you have to have the license to get a permit anywhere in Johnson County. And this is also helps the homeowner, protects the city. It keeps a lot of the riffraff out from, the fly-by-night roofing contractors who come in on storm chasers and that sort of thing. But it also requires us to have 8 hours of continuing education every year, which Johnson County, they administer the entire program. We wouldn't have to do anything at all. All we have to do is put a little space in our building permits. What's your Johnson County number? Who are your subcontractors? Do they have Johnson County numbers? Now, this is not going to prevent the homeowner from getting their own permit. What this does, if they hire somebody else to do the job, then they have to have somebody that's licensed to do it. So like I say, it doesn't cost the city a nickel because we have to pay the fee every year, which is like $225, 8 hours of continuing education, minimum amount of insurance, and it protects the cities and the citizens. And it's also nationwide. I sat in class with a guy from Boulder, Colorado a couple years ago. They use it. Cincinnati, Ohio uses it. There's several cities in Colorado, Oklahoma, Nebraska that use it. And because it's now that it's recognized nationwide, it's a great program. I have no problem doing it because it makes me a better contractor. And I just brought an example. This is the new 18 code book. And then there's like 10 different auxiliary publications. And so you really have to learn how to do things. It doesn't, you just can't go by, well, this looks like this works. So like I say, it's free for us to do. And right now, we are revamping the building permit, not the process, but the building permit forms to accommodate this with all the different subcontractors. So you'll still have to have a business license, like Mr. Webb says, and you'll still have, but all you got to do is have that number. And I think it's a great program. I've been doing it since 2001, and I have no complaints about it whatsoever. It just makes you a better contractor all the way around. So, and not just general contractors. I mean, stucco guy, everybody, plumbing, heating, cooling, swimming pools, stucco, roofing, driveways, concrete guys. I mean, there's just a whole multitude of people that have to have this license. I mean, the big firms have to have it too. So I just think it's a great program, and we would appreciate you approving this so we can better serve our citizens and our community. Thank you.
Mark, thank you very much. Appreciate your input.
Yeah. Any questions while I'm here?
This is Stites. I do. Mark, I appreciate you stepping up and giving that presentation. I appreciate it very much. So one of the things that you had said was that it would not prohibit the homeowner from acquiring a permit. Now, so one of the concerns that I have would be if someone is going to do, and I don't know where this stands right now, a hot water heater. If they have, is that a permitted requirement now within our city? And or would a citizen, a homeowner, be able to go down, get that permit, and have that work done by whoever, whether it be their brother-in-law or themselves, or how would that work? And if getting that permit, would the permit be contingent on the work being performed by a contractor that's on that list?
I'll try to answer that, and Mr. Bishop may have some other comments. So, technically, I think that the plumbing code probably says you have to have permits. Generally, it comes in when there's a gas hot water heater more so than electric hot water heaters. So technically, they're supposed to get it. I don't know that we get that many that come through the door and says, I need a permit. I will say that if they're a homeowner and they're doing their own work, even if you were building something on your own, you're still required to get the building permit. This would just say, do you have to have a license? If you are a homeowner and you perform your own work, then you would not be required to get the contractor license to do that work. If you contract out that work, say you have to hire an electrician, then the electrician would be the required party to have the contractor licensing, not the homeowner. I don't know if that answered all the questions, but so I would say generally if somebody puts if they put a hot water heater in their house to replace it, we're not out necessarily looking for that. And generally, if it's a gas hot water heater, that's probably when a plumber is going to say, I got to go get a permit. And that's generally how we're going to learn of it anyways.
Right. We're also working on a thing too, a document that is adopted by all kinds of cities. It's a document that the homeowner comes down and fills out and has to have it. It's like an affidavit that I am going to do the work myself, and I am going, and it makes it, and I will hire this person and this person and this person. So if they come down for their permit, they'll be able to fill this out and say, yes, I'm doing the work myself. And what that does, it relieves the city of a lot of liabilities. So in that respect, and that's another document that we're working on too.
But again, the permit itself, to get a permit, is determined, whether the code requires it. Right. So there's a lot of things that are maintenance that would not require permits, and not every contractor license out there would it necessarily fall under a permit here. This is, which is the most typical, if you are required to pull a permit and you are a contractor, then based on whatever type of work you're doing, would trigger having this contractor license. And I would note, I think there's over 8,000 licensed contractors in the region or the area. And I think there is about 30 or 40 in Edwardsville, about double that in Bonner, and well over in the hundreds in KCK, because it's required. The unified government also has a requirement for contractor licensing, though I think they do their own program, but also accept the Johnson County program.
That's true. They do. They'll accept, and most cities, all cities will accept that in Johnson County, all of them do. And I think us and Bonner are the only two in the metro area that don't have a program like this right now. So.
Mark, would that protect the homeowner from, let's say some company's going to come in and put a roof on, and workers' compensation, like if they would fall off of your roof?
Right.
To where the homeowner would not be liable for that?
Right. You have to have a certain amount of workman's comp too. I didn't bring that out. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, not only having general liability, you have to have a certificate of workman's comp insurance on file with the Johnson County Contractor Licensing people. So if you don't have that, it's real easy to find out if they have it or not. Because you go right on their website, find a contractor, type it in, and if their name doesn't pop up and say that they can do this, this, and this, they're not licensed. Because you have to maintain that every year. You have to have a certificate of insurance on file by January 31st every year from your insurance company.
This is within Johnson, Wyandotte County area. What area would this
Well,
encompass?
this would protect us too, because they would have it already. So if you get some guys who just come in and start throwing roofs on it, fall off, we don't know if they have any insurance at all. And, a lot of the storm chasers don't have any insurance. And a lot of it to this too is a lot of it has to be due diligence by the community. And a lot of cities, it's the police departments that, not to throw any more burden on you, but I mean, they patrol around. If they don't see the cards in the window or they don't see this, they call it in. So I do that a lot, because if I got to get a permit, everybody else got to get one, So, but you have to have workman's comp in order to maintain this license.
And then there would be a certain amount of educating the public on this too, that, where as a homeowner, you might not know that that your person that's going to do your work need to be licensed, and you might not be aware of that, and you could open yourself up for some liability, probably, couldn't you? So,
yeah, I mean, I get asked almost every single job I do. We do work in the whole metro, but I mean, particularly in Johnson County, during the conversation, who's going to get the permit? And I tell them I do it. I don't need them muddying up the waters. I'll take care of it myself. So, but they've been well educated since, like I say, we've been doing it for 20 years over there. So I think the way to educate the public here might be, with our newsletter, just put a little blip in there, and just every couple months remind people that, hey, you need a permit to get this work done in your house. It protects you and it protects the city, and the contractor.
Could you elaborate a little bit on how that protects the city?
Well, if you got a contractor that comes in and doesn't do any work, doesn't have a permit and does shoddy work, I'm not a lawyer. Let's put that disclaimer out there. But I have known in the past people who have come in and done work on people's houses that we've gone back and done work on. They didn't get a permit, and then now the city they have to go after this person and fine them or whatever they do, whatever their course of action would be. But I think it gives the city a little more leverage, doesn't it, Mike?
I think that what it does is, again, we know that the person or persons doing the work are licensed to do it. So as an example, I could walk in City Hall today and I'm Webb General Plumbing, and I get a business license, and then I come work on your house. I have no experience, no qualifications, nothing to prove that I know anything about plumbing. Do your plumbing work, leave, and then the sewer backs up into your house because it was improperly connected. and then they call the city to come fix their plumbing problem or the hot water heater that, earlier. I mean, there's been cases where, even it got inspected by the inspector, and the city would, they would try to claim liability on the city. And this is a step to ensure that we're doing all the things necessary to ensure the people that are doing the work on homes or in businesses that are doing work here are actually licensed and qualified to do the work. Again, from the homeowner standpoint, from the city standpoint, there is no cost. I was just looking up, from my very phone here, I could look at, Mark Bishop and what kind of contractor license he had, or anybody else. Somebody comes to your house, says they're going to do some work. You want to know if they're licensed. You can plug their name right in from a computer, your phone, make a call, and just find out if they're qualified to do work. It's really around that. Again, the statute says the city can do it, but there's no reason for the city to run its own program to require it to charge people, to charge for them to do it, to make sure they've got the insurance, to make sure that they've done the schooling, that they've passed one of the 4 national tests. So really all we're doing here is we're just adopting and using another organization's program. It's like an interlocal agreement for all intents and purposes. They already do all the work. It's a self-supporting program. And again, it's highly supported by the builders, home builders association, the general contractors associations, any number of contractors and other businesses. They do have like a board that's made up of people in the trades and industries. So if there is somebody that's not following the rules or making, fails to come get building permits from us and everybody else that is licensed, then they have a board that's set up. Again, they take care of all of that. We're using it to ensure that those that come to our city to do work are properly licensed, whether they're building a new home or they're building a 500,000 square foot distribution facility.
But Mike,
That's
what if
really
it's on a roof or building a driveway? That's more what I'm concerned about. I think if they're building a home or a distribution center, that's separate. But if someone wants to do work on their own property, are you saying we've actually had people in our city who had a contractor come in, screw up the job, and then they sued our city for it? How many times does that happen?
We've never had anybody sue us. I know of one case where a family went to close on a house and they wanted copies of, because there was problems with the house itself, and they wanted a copy, I think, of the building permit and the inspections, of which apparently there either had never been done or hadn't been properly kept. I'm not sure which. But again, we're not talking about items that don't require permits. A driveway doesn't require a contractor permit. A driveway, the access requires a right-of-way permit, but that's issued locally. We're talking mechanical, electrical, plumbing, general contractors. So in general contractors are broken down into those that build up to, I think, 3 stories, which is basically your residential. And then there's I think the next level is up to 5. And then after that, it's anything over 5 stories.
It's the license A is you can build anything you want.
Right.
B is up to 3 stories.
That's what it is.
And C is single family, 1 story. Single family dwellings only.
Right. Yeah. Because the codes are different. For 1 and 2 family is a separate code from the International Building Code. So again, it would only apply when there is a permit that is already required by the code, which we already require a person to have if they're going to do work.
Okay. Could you just clarify for me then? So say we need an electric panel put in at our house. I personally know a licensed electrician that would come do it at our house because they're a very close friend of the family that we see on a regular basis, not some fly-by-night company, but somebody who I trust more than a stranger from, a white van coming in the house. Their name's likely not going to be on the Johnson County list. So does that mean now I'm going to have to go spend thousands of dollars that I wouldn't have to on my own property, not a 2-story house or a development building, but am I going to have to spend thousands of dollars extra because now I have to hire someone to do that when I know someone who's licensed and can do the job for me?
Well, you're going to have to, you got to deal with the power companies too, and they're going to require you to have a permit. The power, because they're going to have to probably change out your line set, your lines coming into the house if you're going up with amperage.
Right, but right now I can get a permit, correct? But if we adopt this ordinance, then they would have to be licensed and on this list. So I would have to then hire some company instead of using the person I trust. Is that right?
Well, no, I mean, I don't, and probably don't. So you say the person that you use is licensed, so they have to be licensed by somebody.
Right.
I mean, to be a licensed electrician, you have to take one of the qualifying tests, which is how you get your contractor or your electrical license. So if they're a licensed electrician, they already have had to set for some electrical licensing somewhere.
Right.
And in this area, that's more than likely through Johnson County. Now, if they change out an electrical panel at your house, they're required to get a permit. Whether they get the permit or not, I don't know, right? So that if they come change out a permit at your house by law already today, with or without this, they should obtain a license, a permit, I should say, for an electrical panel change out. Right. And as was said, the meter would be pulled, and the electric company requires us to clear all electric meter change outs. And if we don't have a permit, we don't clear those.
Right, but I'm saying right now, so the person is licensed, but that's not what they do, like they're retired or whatever. So they're licensed, they've been through school, they've gotten the certification, whatever you need, but they're not going to be on that list. So that's why I'm asking you, can they still get the and I'm not doing this right now, I'm just giving you an example.
Sure.
Can we still get the permit, or will they say, well, sorry, or they're not on the Johnson County list because they're not running a business, so they wouldn't need to be. So then now it's going to cost me thousands of dollars more as a homeowner.
What I'm hearing is, okay, you got a friend that's going to come change your electric service. Good. He still has to have a license, because the power company is not going to pull the meter unless you have a licensed electrician standing right there doing the work. So if he has a license, even though he's still retired, he might still carry it in Johnson County, because once you get a license like that, you don't want to get rid of it. So what I think what you're saying is, you just, even if they're a friend, they still have to have a permit. It doesn't matter, it just doesn't matter. You've got to have one of the power companies. Not going to, even though you're getting they might have an electric license, but yes, you will still have to have a Johnson County license if we adopt this.
Okay, so as it is now, they would just have to get the permit, or I could come down and get the permit and say, hey, I'm doing this myself. But after we pass it, they're going to have to be on the Johnson County list, which limits who our homeowners can use, potentially costing them more money. Just confirming.
Well, like I say, there's well over 8,000 contractors licensed through this group alone from all over the nation. I mean, any license to, if they have a license, they had to take the test. If they took the test, then they provide that test results to whatever licensing or that agency. And in this area, it's Johnson County Contractor. So it really shouldn't even be called Johnson County, because it's not technically really part of the county. It's not a county body. It's its own entity. It started because under statutes, that's how it started. But it's, but if they've tested and are licensed, they had to get a license. If they went up to pull a permit at the UG, they would have to do the same thing. I mean, they have to get a license. To get a license, you have to prove that you've taken the test and that it's current.
How
Now,
much does
again-
how much does it cost a contractor to get a license with this organization?
$225 a year. And they take care of all the continuing education, the 8 hours. There's no cost for that. And then they administer, they give you a license and all that stuff. But like Mike says, it's right on the website. All you do is just type your name in, and if you're there, you're good. And also what it does is, do you really want a guy that's got an electric license and doesn't have any insurance wired in your house? I mean, that's a concern I would have, the guy not having any insurance. So, and this, you have to have a minimal amount. I forget what it was. It's 2 million, 3 million, 2 million or something like that. And the workman's comp insurance too. So, yeah.
Carolyn, I'm going to jump in here. What Mark Bishop said was, regardless of whether you pass this or not, if you have somebody come in and put a new panel in your house, the electrical company has to pull the meter. The electrical company will not pull a meter without a licensed electrician. It's as simple as that,
That's true.
whether you do this or not.
No, I understand that. I'm talking about someone who's licensed that just isn't on the list because they're not under a certain company that probably is on the list, but maybe they do it on the weekend or whatever. And I know a lot of the big associations approve it, but they also don't want their guys working on the weekends for other people. My concern is just limiting homeowners to what they can do on their own property. My question, I guess, is can I jump on the Johnson County Contractor Licensing website and check for myself if someone's on the list?
Yes.
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 If we can do that as an individual, if I can do that as a homeowner, then why would we force it through a mandate? Couldn't we just give the information to our citizens and say, hey guys, this is the smart way to hire a contractor, show them all these websites, but then if I have somebody that I trust that I want to do work, and maybe electrical panels too big of a job and maybe a bad example, but just for an example, that way if I want to choose on my own property, because I'm the one at risk ultimately, if I get a bad roofer or something like that, the city's not going to replace my roof. I'd have to do it. And so if that risk is on me, I would just prefer it be my own responsibility to look at the Johnson County website, see if they're licensed and insured. And if they're not, then I'm taking that risk myself, if that makes sense. And I appreciate all the work you guys are doing and putting into it. And I know the intention is to protect our folks. I just feel like if that's something I can do on my own, I don't know that we necessarily need a government hoop to jump through or a mandate when homeowners can just take that responsibility upon themselves. And we could just educate our citizens and say, hey guys, this is the smart way to install or to the smart way to hire contractors. We can put that in our hot shot or on our Facebook or publications quarterly if we wanted to, just to let them make that decision for themselves.
Well, I have a question for you. Why wouldn't you want to protect the citizens of this city? Because a lot of guys, if they're working for, let's just say, I got a friend, the company, he's an electrician. He does not let his guys work on the weekends. They don't carry insurance. So, and my guys, I don't let them, if they're going to go do something, change a door, that's fine. But you can't go out and get a remodeling job because you have no insurance. And that's what this does. They have to have insurance. You just can't come in and say, well, I can change that out, blah, blah. Just even like a leaky faucet. Next day it starts leaking and it's all over the place. Who's going to pay for it? You are. So, I mean, it's
right. And I agree with you, Mark. That's since I'm the one that's going to pay for it, I would just like the ability to choose on my own. And I don't want to, I understand the intention is to protect our people. I just feel like some of it, I would rather have the choice myself and be like, you know what, that faucet's leaking, that's on me. I hired an idiot, but sorry, that probably wasn't the best use. But you know what I'm saying? Like that's on me. But now we have the government limiting who I can hire. And I just feel like when we can just inform our citizens and let them make their own decision, I'm always on that side of the smaller government and informing and educating people and letting them choose instead of restricting their options, when they could really just do this research themselves. So anyway, I'm only one of the governing body here, and everybody else probably has questions or thoughts on it. I don't want to monopolize the time. Those were just my questions and concerns.
If I might just add though, so the permits that come through our office are not homeowner. I mean, for the most part, they're not by a homeowner. Again, we have a lot of commercial contractors that come through, right, that build, these large buildings. We have home builders that build, but not for a person, right? I mean, they're building them. Sometimes they're specs, sometimes they know who they're doing, but the person who's having the structure built is not the typical homeowner. And again, I'm going to say, technically, if you wanted to go build, finish out your basement, you're still technically required to get a permit, even if you do the work yourself. You don't have to have a contractor license, but technically you're supposed to get a permit. Now, do I think that every day in every city across America, somebody goes and does some work in their house that probably should have had a permit and doesn't get one and everything's just fine? Hey, they went out in their yard and dug up their sewer line and did some work on it. Technically, it says if you cut the sewer line, you're supposed to get a permit. So I think the vast majority of those small projects probably happen regardless. And again, if they don't get a permit, I mean, you're working on the inside of your house and don't get a permit, not trying to encourage it, but we only know it if there's some mechanism. And again, mostly we're talking about contractor, the general contractor comes in, we already asked them who's doing your subcontracting work. And sometimes they know and sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's later on before they know who those subs are going to be on their project. So again, mostly it's I'm going to say the vast majority of them are going to be your home builders, your larger projects, and then independent, somebody wants something changed out on electrical service. They already come here to get a permit, and probably a good portion of them have the license. We don't have any mechanism in our ordinance to say you will have this license to go with your permit. You just have to have a business license. And again, vast majority of communities everywhere would require you to show that you have the skill and knowledge to perform the work for which you're coming to get a permit for. And I would say probably the last thing it does, it also ensures when the building inspector goes out there that the person he's dealing with is knowledgeable of the code, because the code changes. It changes every 3 years. So it's also to ensure that the person doing the work understands what's happened. And again, I think that's what Mr. Bishop was saying. There's this contractor licensing and training, which if I understand is included as part of the fee. Right. So I mean, it's I don't think it's a high cost, and again, just really to ensure that we're making sure that the services are being provided are to the best interest of the public. So I'll leave it at that, and there may be other questions, Mayor.
This is Stites. I do have a question. Mike, would you just tell me what you were saying a little bit earlier about, was there a form or something? And I apologize, I didn't really catch all of it. That would, let's just say a hailstorm came through Edwardsville, and one of these fly by night, or if that's what you want to call them, somebody comes into our city and a homeowner elects to use them. They go and get a permit, and this fly by night roofing company goes in and they actually get a business license to put on my roof. But they're not on that list. Were you saying that there was a mechanism that they still could, the homeowner could sign this waiver, or what that you were saying, and the work could still be performed by whoever, and it relieves the city? Is that what I was understanding, or I think that's what I was hearing?
I'll address that. So any homeowner can self-perform work. So if you do the work, you can self-perform and you're not required to be licensed. That's in all of the building codes that we already adopt, right? So if you self-perform, and what Mark is saying, in a number of communities, they will have some kind of a sign-off saying I'm self-performing. What you can't do is say I'm going to self-perform and then go out and hire 5 different contractors to come do the work, right? So you can't say I'm self-performing the electrical work and then contract it to somebody else just so you can get around permitting or licensing. And so
Okay,
several
so that
communities have that.
you can't, and when I say self-perform, I don't mean that I'm not getting up on a roof, heavens,
Right.
no, me. But I'm just saying I can't go get someone that's not on that list to put on and sign some waiver at this point right now. And even though they get the necessary permit from the city and have a business license, that's not acceptable. Is that correct? Is that right?
So currently, well, in order to put a roof on in Kansas, you have to register with the Attorney General's office. And as part of that, you have to prove, basically you have to be a roofing or general contractor in order to get those typically. I mean, you already have to, the AG already has a program in place, but this contractor licensing basically provides that standard about insurance requirements, et cetera. So roofing, there's some additional details in there already for roofing that you can't just hire. A roofer has to be registered in the state of Kansas. We will not issue a roofing permit unless they can prove they have roofing registration, which effectively requires them to have insurance and some other requirements.
Okay, so with that being said, what you just said, if they do have that license, but they're not on that Johnson County list, could I then still hire them though, or no?
Well, if we have contractor licensing, they would have to, well, I'd have to double. I think roofing requires a permit under the code.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's covered under the code, as we already have it, right? So we adopt the building codes in all the various building codes. And in each one of those codes, it speaks to what requires you to have a permit. Not all work requires a permit. For example, a driveway flat work doesn't require a permit. Putting in, gutters on your house doesn't require a permit. Changing out your front door wouldn't require a permit. If I'm going to go cut holes in the sidewalls or the structural pieces, then you're going to get into a permit requirement typically. So they're already required to get a building permit. The purpose of this is to verify they have the skills, knowledge, and training to perform the work.
I would have to say if they went through the trouble of going through the Attorney General's office, they have the Johnson County license, because we all have some sort of thing we have to do with the state. So.
Okay, all right, that answered it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like
Hey
to
guys,
make a
would it
motion to
be,
pass ordinance number 1040.
I think there was a comment.
Well, I heard her start, but he started his
Okay.
motion first, and I will do a second, and then we'll entertain the question.
Second?
All right, there's been a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 1040, adopting the contractor licensing. Now, Carolyn, you have a question.
so sorry about the timing there. I was just wondering if we have the homeowner's affidavit already, can't they just sign a waiver saying they understand the risk they're taking, and that be enough for them to, if they're doing it themselves or if they want, to hire somebody on their own since it's their own property, would that be enough to say, hey, I understand the risk I'm taking. I know I can check out and make sure they're licensed and insured, and then let that be enough of the waiver instead of saying, hey, I'm not going to hire anybody else. I'm doing this just by myself and do it that way. Couldn't we just couldn't we just adjust that affidavit to give the homeowners more rights at their own home? That was my only question.
If I may follow up, so, and are we, when we say a homeowner, or in some case a property owner, I mean, I think there has to be some clarity to that, because again, I buy a piece of property and I'm going to build a new home on it, and I go hire Mark Bishop to build my home for me. And then Mark is the general contractor and he's going to hire subs. I think in that case, a waiver wouldn't really work. If we're talking about, I'm going to go in and change out my plumbing system or something, then that may be, that's a different set of facts, I think. And some cities elect, and so most all cities that have contractor licensing requires it for the general, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. Those are your big trades, right? So if you go into, again, the UG, or you go to Baser, Tonganoxie, Shawnee, Stillwell, Osawatomie, I mean, pick a town, almost all of those have some form of a contractor licensing. Some choose to do their own program. That is, you go take the test, you bring the test results, you pay them the fee, they maintain all the records, all the documents. They call you up in a year and say, come get your permit, get your renewals, show us a new test. We're saying we don't want to have to do all of those pieces because there's already an established program that's widely used in the area. So I know I went a little far, but so the question about the simple homeowner and work is different than somebody building a home, or a business person maybe they rent some space and they want to go in and do work on that space, but now it's commercial space. So that requires higher levels of plans and plan review, et cetera. So,
and real quick before we do the vote, this is Zach, and just speaking as the person who's these permits are coming through our office for, we're the kind of first line of folks. I don't want to get lost in discussion. This is also protection for renters who don't necessarily have a say in the contractor that their landlord is going to hire for certain work. So it does offer some assurance to renters that their landlord is hiring a contractor that has met this recognized threshold. So I just wanted to put that out there for the record.
This is Stike. That's a very good point, Zach, and I wasn't even thinking that way, but that's a very good point. Thank you.
It is, and I just think that we could, if we're talking about commercial, then that really should be treated differently than a homeowner's roof. And I'll just leave it at that. I think it would have been better to separate those out from a new build or commercial to somebody working on their existing property where they live.
Okay, if there are no further questions or discussion, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Shriver?
Yes.
Stites?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Cahar?
No.
Malat?
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Council.
Next item on the agenda would be, Mark, thank you very much for showing up tonight. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, we consider authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Blue Moon Hauling LLC for the Riverview Avenue and 102nd Street culvert installation project.
Dusty Zinger's going to take this one for us.
Good evening. This is Dusty. Item number 5 is regarding the Riverview and 102nd culvert project, which has kind of been an ongoing project, but we finally kind of got it moving here, and we accepted bids on the 18th to replace the 36-inch storm drain under Riverview Avenue just west of 102nd Street. This project will be funded through the 2019 GEO Bond Fund for street and drainage improvements. There were 9 contractors which submitted bids for the project. Blue Moon Hauling was the low bidder on the project at $40,349. I reviewed the line items. It looked like they were much more competitive in mobilization and borrow material than some of the other bidders. I think that's where the high on the list, if you look at the list, was actually 88,000. But there were several in the 40 range and a few in the 60 range. So it's kind of all over the board, but there was 100 yards of borrow material, I think, which maybe kind of, depending on their availability of borrow, push that up a little bit. Otherwise, nothing seemed too out of line. BHC did kind of a small design on this project for us. Their estimate was at 29,000. Nothing looked too far off from what they had on their list. So with that, staff is recommending that City Council authorize the city manager to enter an agreement for the sum of the bid items to Blue Moon Hauling in the amount of $40,349.
Where are they located?
They're out of, now I'm gonna forget. It's
Smithville.
Smithville, yeah. I was gonna say east of St. Joe up there, Missouri.
Their name, which we also took a look at, so they started as a hauling company and grew into an excavating contracting company, and they have done a large number of, I mean, we did the background, so they've done a lot of projects, more on the Missouri than the Kansas side, a lot of schools, site work, grade work, field work, that kind of work, and a lot of utility work. So private development utility work.
I think a lot of storm drain projects for schools and things like that. So I think would really tie into what we're doing.
Are the specs gonna actually make that road wider than it is existing for future?
As a general rule, the road will be the same width, the road surface. Right now there's a lot of road that's not usable because of the edge is so tight right there. But we will be building it out to a 4-to-1 on either side, on the north and the south. So it'll feel more like the rest of the road, or a little better actually. And then it should be able to accommodate some curb and gutter on there potentially in the future, if that was a direction we wanted to go.
Will it have guardrails?
No, it will not, because it will meet the 4-to-1 standard for edge of roadway. So it should clear us of that need, I guess.
Okay, all right. And then start date, completion date, and how long will Riverview be shut down?
So yeah, that's a kind of an issue with the project getting ready to start on 110th Street. There's about a dozen people up there along that route that could be in conflict. So assuming we accept this tonight, I think we can move forward pretty quickly. I've already reached out to the contractor that I'm recommending, and they sound like they'll be able to mobilize as soon as we kind of get their bonds taken care of and stuff. I think the 110th Street project still has a little bit of time on it, so I'm hoping that we'll be able to get in and out in the next couple weeks on this project prior to that starting. That being said, I've discussed it with them already too about potentially having to do it one half at a time. There may be a few additional costs if that happens, but it is feasible if 110th Street does take off. So
I think they've told us that.
I guess, so my question was start date and completion date.
Well, start date could be tomorrow if they get everything in line. It'd probably be more than likely the beginning of next week, potentially. That's where they were when I talked to them at the end of last week. Again, I'll have to go back to them once we have this decision, but looking like a week or so of work, potentially less, depending on weather, of course.
Yeah, we're estimating about 5 working days.
Okay, all right, thank you.
This is the second project that we've had where the engineering estimate is pretty far off. And so I don't know what the deal is, but the last couple of, this one's 25% off. And so I don't know if there's anything that needs to be addressed with that or not.
I mean, if you look at the bids themselves, it kind of sets a standard for how far off they can be. But also this design, BHC put this together for us probably over a year ago or a year ago. So there could be some things in there. Also, I did some more work on it afterwards. I didn't put together exactly what we did, but we may have added a few things after that additional. But that was kind of a ballpark of where we were at.
Okay.
We name it for the
Randy
record.
Gordon, EAC Engineers.
You can't hear you because of the on, yeah.
There you go.
Sorry.
All right, Randy Gordon, VHC Engineers. So to answer your question, typically what we do when we're working on these kinds of estimates, we're looking at the history of bids and trying to assign an average unit price that seems appropriate. So we're looking in the rearview mirror all the time and then figuring out what direction the contractors are headed when they bid new projects. So lots of things can affect that. And that's a great observation. The contractors themselves had a $40-some thousand spread between what they thought the price was. So it could be the time of the year, how busy they are. So it is an imprecise science, and it's really more of an art in trying to read the minds of the contractors who are going to bid this project. We try to give you a reasonable idea of what it probably would cost, a fair price, but we don't decide how much they want to get paid. They get to decide that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I was excited to see 9 bidders. I think that bodes well for what we ended up with as a price.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Blue Moon Hauling LLC for the Riverview and 102nd Culvert project for the amount of $40,349.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Blue Moon Hauling LLC for the Riverview Avenue and 102nd Street Culvert Installation Project in the amount of $40,349. Would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Kahar,
Yes.
Malat.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda will be consider resolution 2021-03 authorizing the reimbursement of funds for preliminary and final design, right-of-way acquisition, and other related expenses for the 98th Street project from future bonds and other tax exempt proceeds.
So Mayor, just for the mayor and council, I'll probably hit on items that kind of address both 6 and 7 to some respects,
Okay.
because they are somewhat tied together. This first part of it, again, as we know, the city was awarded up to $3.8 million in federal STP funds to reconstruct 98th Street from Kansas Avenue north to the city limits. As you recall, we did put money in our 2019 bonds to do some very preliminary engineering for the entire corridor, which is ongoing at this time and gets wrapped up into the final design work. So the purpose of these reimbursement resolutions is we may expend funds today out of other parts of the city's budget that we want to be reimbursed when we go issue debt. And so this simply says, if that happens, then we can reimburse it. So for example, if we had $200,000 in that 98th Street project and our design needs another $226,000 and we hadn't issued the debt yet, that other $226,000 could be reimbursed at a future time when we issue debt. Now, The good thing I will say about it is this. So in 2020, we did issue debt for the 110th Street project. We estimated that our cost on that project were going to come in higher than they did. I guess this is a place where the engineer's estimate was actually over, and we got exceptional bids. I don't think anybody, because KDOT's estimate was pretty close to the engineer's estimate, and the contractors came in significantly less. So it is potential that we will not have to issue more debt or a limited amount of debt once we get a better idea of our cost on this project. So we initially, when we submitted this project to Mark, it was about a $7 million total project. So that includes the right-of-way, utility relocations, the construction, et cetera. We had asked for a little more money. We did not get as much funding as we had requested. You remember, we were basically kind of the last project to get funded, so we didn't get our full allocation that we had hoped for. So there is probable that we will have to use some funds up front to get reimbursed for. So again, long story, this just gives us that ability to repay ourselves from future bond funds. We've used $1 million just as a somewhat of a placeholder. We know that that's basically what our minimum requirement contribution to this project would be under the STP funding formula. So the resolution deals with that, again, to give us the opportunity to refund ourselves from future bond sales that may occur 2 or 3 years down the road. I'd be happy to answer questions on that. And then we can go to the next item relative to the actual design.
How do you want this particular 2021-03? Do you want that as a separate motion?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
To adopt that resolution.
Okay.
We have done several. I mean, we did this on the 110th Street project. We did this on the Kansas Avenue project. This resolution, this is fairly standard requirements for these types of things, and have used this method a number of times.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion, we adopt resolution 2021-03, a resolution of the city of Edwardsville to authorize the reimbursement of funds used to finance certain improvements with the issuance of federally tax exempt bonds, the maximum amount of $1 million.
Second.
Was,
I think I won.
Was that a second, Chuck?
This is Stites. Yes, I believe I won that round.
Okay. All right. That's what I was clarifying that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Can't see your face, man.
Okay, the motion and second is to adopt resolution 2021-03, authorizing the reimbursement of funds for preliminary and final design, right-of-way acquisitions, and other related expenses for the 98th Street project from future bonds and other tax-exempt proceeds. Would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Kahar.
Yes.
Was that yes?
Yes.
And thank you. And Malat.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mike, you're number 7 then.
So the next item is actually authorizing myself to enter into a contract with BHC Roads, or excuse me, BHC, drop that, for preliminary and final design work. The total estimated amount is $426,638. That is a maximum amount. I will say that in the past, even on 110th Street, sometimes we actually go under the total amount. So this is the maximum amount on this, unless there's a change order or some adjustment that we decide later. We would recommend approval of that and enter into the contract with BHC for preliminary and final design work. As you know, they are already doing some preliminary work on the full 98th Street corridor. Much of that, some of that gets built into this already. So we would make that recommendation. They've been a good partner. And as you know, designed several roads in our city for us. We do have representatives here if you have questions that you would like to ask them.
Should there be a dollar figure on the motion?
There is
Yes.
426.38.
Yes, you can add that.
I
I'm
see
sorry.
it down there. I'd like to make a motion to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract agreement with BHC for preliminary and final design work for the 98th Street project in the amount of $426,638.
Second,
Correct?
Yes.
Was that Margaret?
yes.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. Okay, the motion and a second to authorize the city manager to enter in contract with BHC for preliminary and final design work for 98th Street project at a maximum of 426,638. Would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Cahar,
Yes.
and Malat.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we recess into executive session pursuant to KSA 754319B2 for consultation with legal counsel for matters which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship in relationship to the sewer development agreement, and reconvening at 7:40. Is that enough, Mike?
That should be enough. Yeah, we'll need a couple minutes to get hooked up next
Okay.
door and then by phone.
I'm
And
going
we
to put
expect
down
maybe
7:40.
That's fine. And we will be joined also, Scott Anderson, who's our special counsel on this as well.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to enter into executive session pursuant to KSA 754319B2 for consultation with legal counsel for matters which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship to the sewer development agreement, and return at 7:40. Would the clerk please call roll?
Yes, sir. Before I do call roll, just for the folks who are joining us online, I want to let them know the meeting will stay open. The house mics will be muted and then the camera will turn off. So all they'll see is a screen that says executive session until which time you guys return.
Okay.
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Cahar,
Yes.
and Malat.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're staying here. Are we staying here? Oh, we're going next door. Okay. And they're being contacted by phone.
Pretty darn good. Yeah.
It was around.
Yeah. What's that I smell? I smell. Yeah. I know. And all of a sudden I'm hungry and I wasn't. Second.
We have a motion and a second to return to regular session. Would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Kahar,
Yes.
Malat. Yes.
Okay, we're waiting for Mike to retrieve something, and so we'll be delayed just a moment, but we needed to return on time. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, while we're waiting on that, could I say something right quick?
Yes.
I want to say that whatever changes or whatever we've done as far as the audio has really made a huge difference. Everything has been really clear and it sounds good. And I hope that all the rest of the viewers feel the same way. But I really do appreciate whatever changes were made because everything sounds really great. Thank you.
Chuck, Zach gave you a thumbs up. Thank you.
Second that.
Did he have to retrieve it from home?
He,
All right, Mayor.
okay, we're ready? Okay. The next item on the agenda will be consider resolution 2021-04, authorizing the mayor to enter into a sewer development agreement with Compass Commodity Group 300 LLC and Scannell Properties number 516 LLC. And with that, we are turning it over to Scott Anderson.
Mayor, council members, Scott Anderson, council to the city. Earlier this year, the city entered into an agreement for public services with the city of Bonner Springs. The agreement provided, amongst other things, that the city would allow approximately 157 acres of land located at the southwest corner of Riverview Avenue and 110th Street within the city of Bonner Springs to connect to the city of Edwardsville's wastewater system. That agreement is subject to the city and the future developer of that site agreeing on the payment of cost for the improvements and other matters. The city has received a request from a developer to develop that connection. Both a combination of Compass Commodity Group and Scannell Properties are proposing to develop that site in Bonner Springs. And as part of that, we've outlined the potential future connection to the city's wastewater system, which is now on your screen. We have drafted a sewer system expansion development agreement. That agreement is before you tonight for your consideration. And I'm going to briefly walk you through that agreement. In the agreement, there's basically two improvements. There's what's defined as the city sewer improvements. That is the purple line that you see on the screen before you. That is the portion of the sewer improvements that will be available for future connection within the city of Edwardsville. And then there's what's known as the site sewer improvements. That's the connection that runs north-south, and that is in green. That's a force main that runs from the Bonner Springs site up to the city sewer improvements at a point of connection at the corner of end of Village South, the western end of Village South Parkway. In the agreement that we've drafted, the agreement sections 2 and 3 provide that the construction of the improvements and design shall be done by Scannell. So Scannell shall design the improvements, engineer the improvements, or provide for the engineering of the improvements, and at their cost and expense. The city agrees to allow those improvements subject to Scannell and others paying the construction costs of the improvements. And also all the improvements are subject to, the design of those improvements are subject to city approval. As part of the improvements, there's two types of dedications that the city is requiring. One is a dedication of all permanent utility easements in order to place the sewer line south of the Village South Parkway extension. And number 2 is the city's also requiring a dedication of the right-of-way for the Village South Parkway extension. The city agrees that if all the improvements are properly constructed in the manner in which the city has approved the design, that the site sewer improvements connecting the purple to the property in Bonner Springs can connect to the city's wastewater system and discharge up to 100,000 gallons per day at a peaking factor of 3. The city is requiring the payment of a $100,000 connection fee at such time that the engineering plans for all the improvements are approved. And additionally, the developer has agreed to pay all normal city sewer charges for discharging waste into the city wastewater system. As far as future maintenance of the improvements, the east-west portion, the city sewer improvements will be dedicated to the city upon their completion, and the city will maintain them in the future. The site sewer improvements in the green will continue to be the property of the developer and maintained by the developer. The agreement does contain a termination right of the city if the improvements do not progress to our satisfaction. Basically, the developers have 1 year after the effective date of this agreement to commence construction of the improvements, and the developer has 2 years after the date of the agreement to complete construction of the improvements. If either of those time periods are not met, the city does have the right to terminate the agreement. These are the highlights of the agreement. I do know that representatives from Skanel and the developer are here tonight. I believe they're expecting to have a few brief comments for the city, but I'm happy to take any questions you may have now, or if you prefer, I can do that after the Skanel presentation.
Let's go ahead with their presentation. I don't know which one wants to go first, Skanel or Compass Commodities. Who would choose to go first? Okay, state your name and address and who you represent.
Hi, my name is Jake Kurth. I am a resident in Long Lake, Minnesota. Address is 155 West Wayzata Boulevard, Unit B in Long Lake, Minnesota. And I represent Skanel Properties, or the developer in this case. Very excited about this potential project in Bonner Springs. Thank you all for allowing me to come up and share a little bit more about it. We feel strongly about this project of Bonner Springs, how not only does it benefit Bonner Springs, but it also benefits the city of Edwardsville as well. The sewer connection that would, as depicted from 110th Street going west and then south down to Riverview, we feel that by water being pumped, it will also add dollars and revenues to the city of Edwardsville. Not only that, we also think that jobs will be created for the citizens of Edwardsville as well.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Gosserand. I'm an attorney with Van Osdal PC 1000 Walnut Suite 1500, Kansas City, Missouri. I represent Compass Commodity 300 LLC. The principal of Compass Commodity is attending remotely. His name is John Monson. I agree with all the statements that were made by Mr. Anderson today. I do have to apologize. We did mess one thing up. My client is actually a Delaware limited liability company, so we'll have to change that on the agreement. I apologize. That is something I should have caught, but we think that this is a very good, a mutually beneficial proposal that's being made. There are substantial private investments being made at the expense of the developers to open up additional development to the west. We're dedicating land, and they're expending, $300,000 to $400,000 in sewer infrastructure. We think that what we're doing is, what Skanel's doing is going to open up incredible amount economic prospects for Edwardsville and create possibly hundreds of jobs. We understand that the sewer is one of the most important things that leads to development, and my client's being proactive and working with Skanel on this project and wants to partner with the city for mutually beneficial relationship. Thank you.
And Scott, at what point would you like for questions to be opened up to the city council to either of those presenters?
Yeah, I think we're ready for questions now, either of myself or either of the two developer groups.
I have two questions. One is, I don't remember in the agreement anything being stated about that green section as to their ability to sell property around that and connect to that. Council member, there is a section in the agreement that prohibits connections to the force main.
Right now, what we're anticipating a meter. If you can see in the bottom left of the drawing, it says proposed pump station. Oh, there it is, right above it, right above the north directional binder. It says proposed meter pit. It's necessary for the city to measure the discharge into the city system. So in order to do that, we put a meter in. And we've also specified there's no connections between the meter and the point of connection, which is at the western end of Village South Parkway. That allows us to, one, accurately measure what's being discharged into the city system. And two, my understanding is you generally would not connect to a force main anyway. It's not, I guess you'd say, prudent.
Okay.
I'd like a point of clarification, and I understand that we cannot connect to a force main, but all the purple will be accessible to other property owners, but the green is not. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
The purple piece will be dedicated to the city upon completion and under the city's complete control on who may connect to it.
Okay. Sorry, Chuck.
No, I appreciate the clarification. The other one is it seems to me that it would really be good to get that sewer going just as fast as possible and get the right of ways in place so that, because it may be a while before they're able to get clients on that property. And it'd really be great to have that development started and moving forward. Is there any way we can talk about that?
Council member, that's a great question. Before I answer that, I might ask one of the developers, because I'm a little unclear on it myself, what exactly has to happen? I mean, if we sign this agreement, what has to happen for you to seek the building or start the building?
This is Jake with Scannell. This is going to be user driven and market driven. Obviously, we foresee the fact that the industrial market as of right now is one of the hottest sectors in all of development. With that being said, I think what you're alluding to, Mr. Adams, is the sheer timeline of a year and a year and 2 years. The rationale behind that is simply because of what if there was an event like COVID-19 that strikes. With that being said, is if a user comes in, which we are talking to users daily, and wants to spur development, we would hit the go button immediately. But as of right now, it's strictly being user driven, but we are extremely bullish on the site, which means that we will pull the trigger within that year timeframe if the user does not come.
Yeah, just a point of clarification to you, sir, is that our interest is to have that started as soon as possible, instead of waiting for you to find someone for one of your buildings in the development, which would open up that land on that side for development right now instead of waiting another year or so. Is that correct, Scott?
Mr. Mayor, the way the agreement's drafted now is the city has the right to terminate after the end of 1 year if they have not pulled a permit by that time. So from the sounds of it, it is a speculative project. It sounds like they're very optimistic about finding someone, but if they don't, if they don't find somebody within a year, one of two things could happen. They could decide to go ahead and build, or they could decide not to, in which case the city would be faced with the decision of terminating the agreement or giving them an extension.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? Yes. So I think it's fair to say that I guess to sum it up, from the sounds of it, you won't get the purple unless they get a project. If a year goes by and they don't have a project, they may decide to build it anyway. They may not.
Well, that kind of takes some of the motivation away, because we really want to see the whole north end of the city develop, and that's prime property over there, and it would be nice for us to partner on that to make that happen in a quicker fashion.
Yeah, council member. I certainly understand what you're saying. I can tell you that the current draft of the agreement, says what I've said it says. But, that's up to certainly that's up to council if you prefer to go a different direction. This is the opportunity to talk about that. I guess, I guess I'll ask the developer.
Okay.
Yeah. My understanding is the purple piece is it accurate? I don't know how the expense relates to the entire project. Is there any, could the purple piece be started now?
My name is Chip Corcoran. I'm with Renaissance Infrastructure Consulting, working with both Compass and Scannell. From a technical standpoint, yes, the project could begin, the design could begin, and the process could start. But it would be a business decision on when to execute contract with a contractor to move the project forward.
So this is Stites. So that, so if I'm understanding this, right of way still needs to be granted and easement. And if we're saying that we would like to see this purple area running east and west developed before or in lieu of whatever happens on the 160, then there would need to be a amendment to the current development agreement. Is that correct?
Yeah, Councilmember Stites, you are correct. The current draft of the development agreement does not require anything to be commenced. Well, it requires all of it to be commenced within a year, but that's it. It does not have a separate requirement for the what are defined as the site sewer improvements, the piece in purple.
I don't know how everyone else feels, but I believe with the a year is an awful long time to hold up potential development on that north end. I would like to see us put in a timeline or a constraint on when that purple is to be constructed and the dedication of right of way and easement.
I was just going to ask that. So there's also, I don't think anything in the agreement separately discussing the easement time frame, right? When that would be dedicated, or maybe there's been discussion. I don't recall specifically when that would happen, but I don't think that we have anything relative to the easement, especially the road easement specifically, but both the easements that would be public. The public sewer easement and the dedication of right of way.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the sewer easement has to be dedicated before at some point before the sewer construction on the sewer improvements are commenced. The agreement is actually silent on the when the roadway right of way has to be conveyed. However, as part of allowing the connection, that there is a statement in here about all other conditions having been satisfied, and then there's also that would cover us, and on top of it, the developer, if they didn't they'd be in default at some point if they didn't convey it, but we could certainly tighten that up.
That would be potentially. That would, when you get to the mic, I'm sorry, that potentially could be 2 years down the road before the actual connection occurred under the agreement.
Yes, that's correct. They do have 2 years from the date of the agreement to be operational.
Could it be a multi-step process where the easements and right-of-ways are deeded over to us immediately, and then the sewer could be put in at a later time?
I know that the developer does not currently control all of the ground. I'm not sure how much they don't control. I know they're negotiating for some of those easements now. Again, I'm not sure how much. The developer could certainly answer that better. But I suspect they would want a certain amount of time to acquire all of that right away. I think it's fair to give them, I mean, I think it's fair to, I think immediately would be a pretty tough standard, but at the same time, you could certainly tighten it up well up from a year.
So Scott, as far as
This is Stites.
Councilmember.
This is Stites, and I agree with that. Immediately is, probably a little harsh and not possible. But I don't believe that 90 days would be out of line.
I was going to just say that the portion of Village South Parkway and the purple are owned by the development partner. As I understand, the portion in green and the other, which I think is referred to as lot 948011. I don't know what that status is. I mean, it still shows ownership of another party. So, but Village South Parkway in the purple is, I think, owned by Compass Commodity, one of those. Somebody else could answer that for sure.
Are you saying the full length of the purple right now is controlled by that group?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Both the sewer and the road easement?
Yes. So the parcel that I think it's, my eyes are not as good as they used to be, 948. I think it's 908. So where the parkway is and the sewer easement is all on that same parcel, which is owned by, Compass Commodity has some different names, right, but one of the Compass Commodity names. The portion to the west where it says that's kind of highlighted in yellow in the green area is, I mean, unless something's changed, is not owned by them and it's owned by another party.
This is Jake with Scannell. So Scannell's, we are talking about the 156 acres that is in the southwest corner of Riverview and 110. Without the purple and the green, both of those sewer connections, the development doesn't work.
Right.
The cost to do all of that is at Scannell's cost, the purple and the green. With that being said, is not only that cost to put that infrastructure in, but also the infrastructure costs for the road improvements as well. So this stuff doesn't just kind of happen overnight, but at the same time, it's a very large investment into this area to spur growth for the mutual benefit of Edwardsville and Bonner Springs.
And this is Stites again, and I understand what you're saying as far as the south, and I wasn't saying that needed to be constructed. That can happen at a later date whenever your project on the south side in Bonner happens. But for Edwardsville, it seems like it makes sense for us to benefit that purple would be start construction, and I'm going to use the word immediately, along with the right-of-way and easement as soon as possible.
Yeah, Mayor, council members, this is Scott Anderson. If I may summarize where we're at. From the questions I've received, it sounds like the city is generally okay with the concept, with the agreement in general. It sounds like there's some concerns about when do we get the purple, and is a year too long? And it doesn't sound like there's a lot of concern. We're interested in the, sorry to call it purple and green, but makes it clear. We're interested in the purple. When they do the green, so be it. I guess the question that I think for the developer, one of the developers, whomever wants to answer it, I think what the council's getting at is they like the agreement, but they don't really want to wait a year. They don't want to, one, wait a year, and two, they don't like the speculative nature of it. Although I understand you're extremely confident about finding a tenant, but they don't want to wait a year for the purple. They don't care about the green, and they don't, they'd like some certainty to it. So I guess someone needs to answer for the council. Can they get it sooner, and can some of the uncertainty be removed?
I don't believe today immediately that we're not prepared to make that investment and commitment to just do the purple. It would come hand in hand, the purple and the green.
What about the commitment of the right of way? The transfer of the right of way? I think that comes from the Encompass Group.
Mr. Mayor, this is John Monson up here in the hinterland. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good evening. That's a fair question. Was that Mr. Adams who asked that as to the dedicated right away? There's no question this is a chicken and an egg situation here. And so we're wanting to, we collectively, all of the Compass group, as well as we hope the city, would be supportive of giving greatest opportunity for success. And we thought that this plan would do that. We are prepared to make significant land contributions in terms of right of way. Just to clarify that 948911 is the Studi parcel, which we have under contract. And we have, Tony, if you can hear me, I am not sure how we ended up with the assurance that that additional right-of-way dedication would be there relative to the timing of that actual acquisition. But we all want to see this happen as quickly as possible. We know that Scannell does have the ability to do this, and I guess I would ask Scannell what is the 1 year their minimum, or is there, and I don't know if Jake can hear me, but what does Scannell feel will give them the best opportunity to be successful?
We feel strongly that within the statement or within the agreement that the 1 year gives us adequate time. We're not saying that it's going to take us a year, but as far as giving us time, because we do feel that the investment into this park that's just south of Riverview will take time, especially based upon the velocity inside the market today.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I was just going to add, John, I could hear everything you said, and just to clarify, we're confident that we can obtain control to put that green part in, but I know that that's really not of great importance to the city. The most important thing is the purple line. And I think what Scannell is telling you is it's not like they're wanting to have this a bunch of fully developed areas or a bunch of tenants. It's only going to take one. If they find one tenant, they're going to have the sewer system for the tenant. And this is a good area. It's a prime area for development. We understand, the city understands that. So, the first tenant that comes along that's going to need sewer access is going to need this system to be put in. So it's just a matter of finding one tenant that wants to invest in development in the area.
I think maybe part of this discussion is there's two issues. There's the construction of the sewer and that timing versus the dedication of the areas that are inside Edwardsville, which is the Village South Parkway portion inside Edwardsville, and the purple sewer easement. Is there I mean, there should be no reason necessarily that that could not occur sooner than construction. I mean, eventually that's going to happen anyway. I mean, that is the development plan for Village South Parkway and the extension of sewer. I mean, it's kind of on the books. I mean, there was even a design at one point to build that sewer. So, I mean, from a timing standpoint, if those are separated, that is getting the dedication of the right of way and the sewer easement versus the actual construction of the sewer. I mean, they're two different things. I just throw that out. Seems like that's somewhere where we're going and we go back and forth.
I would
Scott,
concur.
you may.
I'd concur with that. That was my second line of thinking, was in a good faith effort to move forward and show that you're serious about the project, is you could dedicate that that area that's in the blue and also the right of way for the purple as quickly as possible, just to show a good faith effort in moving forward.
I would have to concur with my clients about that. John, I know you're on the line, but the way that the agreement's currently designed is the dedication occurs upon completion of the improvements.
Right. And I do have other partners who would need to agree. I guess I am not unwilling to do that if that is the way the right of way and the utility is going to go, no matter what. So I don't know how we do something here tonight. I know Scannell, I have a feeling, and I'm purely speculating here, but my guess is Scannell has probably a handful of calls to make tomorrow to interested parties wondering if they got the utility, got the development agreement or not. If they do, I think the ball is going to be rolling in if not one direction, there's going to be quite a bit of interest. I believe there's a pent up demand, and this will be like taking the finger out of the dam. Jake, am I close on that?
Yes, sir. Yep.
And if Jake puts in the call tomorrow and says not happening, then they might go somewhere else. So, and I'm not saying that for any other reason than we've, as you all know, been working here for a long time to see development in all 360 acres. And so right now, given the big picture environment, this is our best shot. Scannell is a world-class developer. And so we know their credentials. We know that they would not be interested in this property if it were not something they could do, because they've already put a lot of money into it. They're going to continue to put money into it. And we're hoping that Edwardsville will see the upside to giving Scannell the opportunity to make that call tomorrow and say, hey, it's going to happen.
Hey guys, this is Carolyn Kahar. I just had a question on that. If the developer or the companies are not interested or able in starting the right-of-way dedications or the sewer construction for the purple area beforehand, why wouldn't we just wait until they had a user or tenant ready to go?
Mayor, council members, Scott Anderson, I do believe it's reasonable for the developer to require the agreement before they find a tenant. They're not going to go out and negotiate a deal with a user and then tell that user, hey, by the way, we've got to go back to the city of Edwardsville and make sure we can get a right user sewer system so we can service your project. The user most likely is going to say, there's sites are a dime a dozen, we'll go somewhere else. So I think the developer would say that really impacts their ability to find a tenant. And I would be inclined, from my experience, to agree with the developer on that point. But we do have the issue of, right now before us, we have a resolution approving the agreement in substantially the form before you. And the agreement as drafted does just require commencing the improvements within a year and completing within 2 years. It does not have a time frame for the conveyance of the easements, although I think the sewer easements would certainly have to be on the Edwardsville side would certainly have to be conveyed early in the project. But we've heard from the developer, and it's their position that it's not worth, they don't want to do it, basically. It's not worth, they don't want to spend the money or the time before they have to. I think we're probably at the point, barring anybody wanting to, additional comments from the developer, or unless there's other questions from the city, I think it's up to the council to decide whether you like the agreement as is, or based on everything you've heard, if you'd like to approve the agreement with certain conditions, certain requirements, approve the agreement as is, but they have to start within X number of months, or approve the agreement as is, but the right-of-way and or sewer easements have to be dedicated within a certain time. That's I think we're probably at that point where
I sort of like that option to interject that into the development agreement, not requiring them to do the dedication or the construction right now, but some language that would give us some assurance.
And, we're at the, I usually like to be more sure on these points. Unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of time to negotiate the end of this agreement. So we didn't have a chance to, feel out some of these points like I would have liked. I do think, you can always approve the agreement with whatever additional conditions you'd like, and hopefully they work for the developer. If they don't, I'd say council meets twice a month. They're welcome to come back and.
Well, I really don't like the idea of preventing them from to market it just because we're hung up on this. But I would like the comment that you made about some additional language, that would.
I would encourage, I would certainly encourage the council. From everything I've heard tonight, it sounds like we generally like the agreement.
Yeah.
It's just concerns about what we get concerns about when we get it.
Yeah.
I would certainly, and I know the developer's under some timelines. I would, if you're so inclined to put some requirements on time frame for deeding roadway and or sewer easements, I would encourage you to approve the agreement with those conditions in it instead of not approving the agreement and sending it back for further negotiation. Hopefully those conditions will be acceptable to the developer and allow them to get going. If they're not,
but we really don't need to craft that part of the requirement tonight. Is that what you're saying?
No, that wouldn't.
Other than the consideration for those agreements or conditions, I should say.
Yes, the resolution before you tonight approves the agreement in substantially this form. Obviously we can go through, we make corrections, but big conditions like this, it's nice to have some direction.
Yeah, I would like to have some kind of a time frame for the deed of the right of way for the street, and also the sewer right of way. And I would make a motion that we adopt the sewer system expansion development agreement as written, with the addition that the right of way for the street and the sewer would be dedicated and transferred to the city within 120 days.
From the effective date of the agreement.
From the effective date of the agreement, yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, I don't know that I've got the whole motion, other than it's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution 2021-04 with some right-of-way dedication within 120 days. Is that correct? Okay. Correct. Very good. If there are no further questions, I'm going to ask the clerk to please call roll.
I
Driver?
actually have a question we didn't get around to yet, and that was along the along the 110th Street and Speaker right of way. What we've never seen pictures other than preliminary plats from the Bonners website of huge concrete buildings coming in, and my concerns, I mean, this is all very important that we work out, but before we go too much further on it, I think it's important to just look at what that's going to look like for the entrance of our city, and then also for the folks who live up there on Speaker Road and on 110th Street. Do you guys, as the developers, have plans to landscape, to put in berms or rows of trees or anything to make it visually appealing for the entrance of our city and for the neighbors who live up there?
Okay, Carolyn, we've got Chip Corcoran coming to the microphone to respond.
Well, Chip Corcoran again with Renaissance Infrastructure Consulting. So the city of Bonner Springs has specific setback requirements and landscaping requirements that address the issues that you're referring to. And so those items will come up in a final plan review. And the way I've seen things happening, I think Edwardsville will have a chance to comment and review those documents. But there is absolutely the intent to abide by required setbacks and landscaping along Speaker Road and 110th Street.
Thank you.
I'm just going to ask Chip, I know you and I spoke about this a little bit. So as I recall, the elevation of 110th Street when the improvements are done, and basically the elevation of the floor elevation of the first building are roughly the same elevations, but there's certainly a fair amount of elevation change between those 2 points. Is that what I mean, I know our road goes up to 4 to 1 and goes, but I don't remember if you have kind of a, 6 feet, 8 foot, 10 feet before it drops. I'm just not sure how you're addressing mainly that corner, I think is, of high, I mean, that's one area where there's a lot of visibility. I don't know if you can address that at all from grading, et cetera.
So as we talked tonight, the buildings are speculative, but I think there's every intention to be a good neighbor, regardless of whether it's in Bonner Springs or not, with the adjacent residents. I just don't want to put ourselves in a box tonight. But again, there's, everybody wants this to work for all parties. And that's not something that requires a substantial investment to address. And so I think the options are open to discuss what would work best for Edwardsville residents that are adjacent to the property, as well as what's required by Bonner.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chip.
And my question is, so I want to go back to the start date on the purple. So somebody clarify for me, is it 1 year or is it 2 years that could be tied up, that we don't have anybody that start on that sewer?
This is Scott Anderson. Right now, the agreement as drafted says after 1 year from the effective date, if developers have not commenced construction of any of the improvements. So that means within 1 year the developer has to start on something, the green, the purple, wherever they want to start. And then it says, at any time after 2 years from the effective date, if the developers have not finalized the improvements and the improvements are not operational prior to such date. That means within 2 years of the effective date, there has to be the ability to take sewage from the property in Bonner and deliver it to the Edwardsville wastewater system. So it's a 1 year start on something, 2 years finish everything. And then the motion amended that by also requiring all the right-of-way along Village South Parkway, both sewer and street, to be dedicated within 120 days of the effective date.
Right, just the dedication, not a start date on the purple. So it could literally be 2 years before anybody north of Village South Parkway could tie into that sewer. Is that correct?
Yes, that you are correct.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of that. I think there needs to be a start date on the purple, and I had originally said something about 90 days, but I'm okay with moving to months.
You can amend the motion.
Excuse me?
Chuck Stites, what you can do instead of voicing the way you have is make an amendment to the motion indicating some start date on the sewer.
Okay, then I make the motion, the amended.
Okay.
And Mayor, may I pause it just for a moment?
Okay, go ahead. Wait a minute, Chuck.
In order to start on the improvements, it has to be, the city has to approve the design. Chip, how far are we from even, how much time is this, are we designed? I mean.
So right now, as Mr. Webb had mentioned, there was a preliminary design completed, I'm guessing back in 2016, 2017, somewhere in that time range. This does vary from that just a little bit in terms of its depth and how it connects to the force main and so forth. But once we're kicked off on the design, it's maybe a 30 to 45 day time period. I'm sure the city would want another 30 days or so to review and comment on the plans. We have to get approval with the Kansas Department of Health and Environment and so forth. So if go was tomorrow, we're probably 90 days to have a set of plans ready for construction. But again, it's a business decision on when go starts.
So could his concern be addressed at that time rather than now?
Councilmember Stites concern?
Yes.
You know,
before we go into to him amending the motion,
I think real quick, I think that from the concern, we want to know they're working on we want to know the project is progressing. We understand they don't want to put improvements in the ground for as long as they have. I think 120 days is, what about saying it has to be, the city has to approve the design within 120 days. That gives them 4 months, kind of consistent with the 4 months for the city to approve the design, them indeed the right of way. And then probably, I mean, then you're going to have to bid it, get a contractor lined up. I mean, it's probably 6 tough to get 6 months. I mean, before 6 months to get somebody out there building it. Yeah, I mean, it's so I do think we could certainly, we could make it a three-prong design by a certain date. We want them to know that they're at least going. So number one, we could say you have to design it by a certain date, and those plans ultimately become the property of the city. In case the project falls through, we could use them. 2, they have to deed by a certain time, and then 3, they have to start construction by a certain time, and maybe it's 120 days / 6 months to start construction.
Okay.
I think I would just
Scott.
add to Scott's comment is, once they start construction, and Chip can probably address this, I mean, 1,200 feet of sewer is, I mean, not a long process. I wouldn't think more than 45 days construction.
That's
I mean,
correct. The only contingency would be if there's a lot of rock. to
right,
take out of
rock or something, but I mean,
measures, but-
generally
Sure.
considering, 45, 60-day construction period for that part, right? And then, force mains are somewhat easier to build because you don't have to worry about grade to the same level. Now, the part, and again, I'm just, probably the longer term part is probably the lift station, as far as, depending on what method you're going to use. That's probably the longer kind of design and construction period than it is the pipe. And again, I think as Scott said, I mean, the lift station, until you have a client out there, it's not as important to have that piece of it. But those are my comments. You may want to address. Try to put some timing around it.
That's fair to say.
I don't know if that helped, Mr. Stites, but just try to put some timing to that process.
Yeah, it did somewhat. So what we're saying, the amendment would be, well, the motion would be that within 120 days that the design, I don't know why we would vote on or approve design prior to the right of way being acquired. So I think that should be first and foremost, that happens first, and at that 120 days. And then with a time frame, Scott, that you were talking about, with the design being approved shortly after that, because they can for sure be working on that while this 120 days is happening, and then with a start of construction on the purple within 6 months.
You need a
So,
second?
Mr. Stites and council, I mean, and again, I don't want to, the developer has to answer the question. But fundamentally, once you start construction of the sewer, you're going to build it. You're not going to go out there and start and lay, 100 feet of pipe and then walk away for 2 months and come lay a few minutes, So I don't know. I think part of the purpose of making sure there was kind of a deadline was as much protection for the city. And I see Jake here. He's built a lot more of these probably than I have, but once you start construction, it's just a matter of where you're going to start and what parts you're going to build and go. Generally speaking, this is not a difficult sewer project as far as length, and it's a little deep in areas. That's probably the biggest concern I know that engineering has had in the past, but it's not a complicated sewer project. So I think Jake wants to speak to that maybe.
Yeah, so to what Michael was saying just a second ago, once we start, we're not going to stop. But if we go, let's just tick back a year and just work backwards, I can see where you guys are. I can see the concern. You're wanting protection. You're wanting to know that the project's actually going to happen versus Scanel coming to the table and then just sitting on their hands. You want to see movement. And it's not just movement that's going to benefit Bonner Springs and our site, but you're wanting to see the spur and the growth that's north of Village South Parkway, and wherever else. That's the overall goal. We're all wanting the same thing. It's just a matter of kind of what Mr. Munson said was what comes first, the chicken or the egg. So if we work back from a year and with RIC consulting us, the time frame to design, the time frame to construction, the time frame to continue to market, and to continue to tell our prospects that this is actually going to happen, and this is the first step that needs to happen, is all relative in the time frame that's already spelled out inside the agreement. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not clear that we need really, Chuck, I don't know that we really need to do an amendment. I think if we give them the direction, I think they already hear us. So if we could go ahead and respond to the original motion, and then there are some of those things that can't be answered right now, but they can be answered when we get a design. Is that correct?
Yes.
Some of the questions that are being asked can be answered once we get the design.
Certainly.
Okay.
But it doesn't allow us at that time to have a start date on the purple. Right now it does. Right now, the amendment.
Unless the resolution is amended, right now, the only timeline is start within a year.
And I don't know that you could get anything better than that from anybody. So just my 2 cents. If there are no further questions, I'm going to ask the clerk to please call roll.
And just to verify, we are talking as it was amended by Mr. Adams. So it's the agreement with the amendment that the right of way and easements be basically submitted to the city, given to the city, granted to the city within 120 days. Just make sure we have the same motion.
Correct.
And that is it. That's the motion right there. Just the dedication of the way began. We have that within 120 days, and not a start date on the no design approval in 6 months, or start date in 9 months or 6 months. Nothing. Is that correct?
Correct.
I thought there was a portion in there about the design. Was that the 120 days as well, or?
Mayor, if I recall, I may have it wrong, but I believe the motion was the agreement as is with right away within 120 days.
Okay.
And that was it. And then I mentioned the possibility of requiring design too, but I don't believe that was ever caught in the motion.
So if we wanted to put a time on the design of, say, 6 months, that would be adequate, Chip? Okay.
Scott mentioned a couple of times that he didn't have much time to work on this or look over it. Would it be beneficial just to give our Scott Anderson a little bit more time to get a development agreement looked over and have more time to review it and prepare for the next meeting, and he could work out all these details?
I don't think that would be of a lot of benefit, Carolyn. I really don't. I think we've got a clear direction for them to do what we want them to do, but to delay it again, is going to delay everything. So,
Mr. Mayor, this is John Watson. May I ask a question at this point?
Yes.
To Jake, how would Scannell feel about starting within 180 days instead of 1 year for the construction, the right-of-way dedication within 120 days, and approved design within 150 days, something like that? Is that something the developer would be amenable to?
John, I heard your question. This sort of question is one that I obviously take back to my team. I hope you guys can understand that. But with that being said, is Scannell is bullish on the site. Scannell wants to mutually benefit not only Edwardsville, but also Bonner Springs and whomever else around it. And I think that the adequate time frame that has been proposed within the agreement that is for a year, although we feel that that gives us some cushion. John, did you say 6 months or was it 150 days, which is kind of
Mr. Stites was suggesting 6 months, 180 days.
Correct.
I think the time frame of starting design within 6 months would be something that Scannell could agree to. But again, I'd like to, this sort of decision comes with, I have to go back to my team.
Jake, they were suggesting approval within that amount of time, not starting design in that time.
So, and that would presumably put starting design within, takes design, 30 to 45 days and another 30 days to review, and that starts design within the next, let's call it 3 months. Is that kind of where we're at as far as time frame?
I think you'd want to start you're talking about the sewer design? I think that's what they're talking about, the sewer design.
Yeah, I think that we would be amenable to that.
Starting?
Yes, we would be amenable to that.
Okay, I'm not trying to confuse the situation here. Amenable to, now Chip was saying 30 to 45 days, you could have something to show the city. And I assume that's from tomorrow. Is that correct, Chip?
He nodded yes.
I didn't hear anything rattle, so I didn't know.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm just, so we're talking about the design, completion of the design, start of the design, just what, I mean, so we have the easements, and I think Chuck Stites said this earlier. I mean, part of the way you know what your easements are going to be is you somewhat have to know what your design is, roughly. And I think the process would be somewhere in the preliminary design and right-of-way acquisitions, if I was doing the traditional project, would be happening concurrently, just like we talked about tonight on 98th Street, right? So those two pieces happen, and then you're going to get to the point of, then I have final design, sign off on that. Then I would put together bid documents for construction, send it out for bid or however they're going to work. And then you're going to start the physical construction at some time. I think what I'm hearing is we want to make sure how that process gets started and continues. And I know we had 120 days for the easements. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, we could probably have the design sign off within that same period of time. I mean, I'm just trying to put pieces together from, so we could have the right-of-way acquisition and design completed in 120 days. And then you still have start of construction, which to me means backhoe in the ground. I mean, they're digging, right? So they got to back off of that. So I'm trying to put some dates, and we've gone all over. So, I mean, I think that 120 days would be feasible. And I think that from a motion and a second, Mr. Adams could amend his motion, and whoever made the second could second that amendment without doing a whole separate vote. But that's, I'd have to leave that to the city attorney on the motions and second, but that would tie those two together, easement acquisition and completion of design, because that completion of design then has to go to KDHE. I mean, you can't send that to them until it's done. Yeah. And it clearly has to go to KDHE because it's an extension of our system. Yeah. We actually have to submit it, but I mean, the developer will prepare it, but we have to submit it. So in that process,
I'm not sure whether more amendments need to be done, and that's.
I'm just saying we can do, I think, easements and design in that same period.
That's the 120 days that we already have.
Chuck,
So
let me ask
so
you.
easement and design in 120 and a start of when?
Chuck, I was going to ask you a question. In the agreement, it states that the project has to commence within 12 months. And so what would it be? Could we clarify the language to say the project which includes the initiation of construction of the sewer within 12 months?
I'm sorry to say.
So we're in the contract, it says that we're requiring that they start the project within 12 months.
Yes.
Could we add defining terms that they start the project, which includes the initiation of construction of the sewer at 12 months? Because Chuck, is that something that we could work with? Because I know I share your concern about 2 years. That's for darn sure.
Well, right now, improvements is defined.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
In
Scott.
anything in the green or the purple. So as it's drafted now, they could go out and start anything in the green or the purple within 12 months, and they would meet the timeline.
Okay, and so it's not commencing of the building of the buildings in Bonner Springs.
No, nothing in this agreement says anything about.
Okay, so it's 12 months, they're commencing construction in Edwardsville.
On the purple or the green, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're just talking about the sewer right now, and
Yes.
it has nothing to do with the building. It's
Absolutely.
been my understanding all along that this is just about the sewer.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Don't we need more specific
Councilman
that
Adams?
in the purple?
Carolyn, we can't hear you. You're breaking up.
Sorry about that. I was just on what Councilman Adams was saying. I was wondering if we need to be more specific that our construction timeline starts in the purple area.
We can certainly say that if we'd like. I mean, I'll admit my knowledge on sewer construction is pretty limited. I don't know if you'd. I don't know
Well,
how it works.
I'm not so sure that has to be included, because once the project gets started, it's going to have a timeline of its own. So to arbitrarily set a timeline for that I don't think would be productive.
That's what I
Is that
envisioned
correct?
when I drafted it.
Okay.
That you're not going to start something
Yeah.
and not finish.
Yeah.
That for some reason I had in my mind, we're talking about starting the project.
Yeah. No.
And so the fact that I guess should have thought of it, all of it's in Edwardsville. And all we're talking about is sewer. So the sewer construction would start 12 months from tonight if we agree with or
No
pass
later
it.
than.
Right.
From the effective date.
Right.
Yes.
No later than 12 months,
Will be soon.
or the agreement canceled.
Yes.
Uh,
At the city's office.
I was all right with it saying the 120 days for design and right-of-way acquisition, and I would bend it probably that I would say that completion of the purple is within 1 year of tonight. That's how I would do it. Completion of the purple. And that would give them a start date of whenever they get it done. They know that it's got to be completed in 12 months from tonight.
Any comments from Canal?
I mean, if we're gonna be doing the purple, we're doing the green as well.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I hear what you guys are saying. You want the ability to spur growth north of Village South Parkway.
Yeah.
And you don't want a started project and then a stopped or incomplete project. Sounds like, I'm kind of reading between the lines. It sounds like that there's some heartache around that.
Mhm.
But I will say that you have Scannell and Scannell's track record. And if you have not already, please look at our past projects and what we do on a national scale and now global scale, that this is what we do. And you know, we've talked and we felt very, very good about everything that has gone on, but in order to have, you know, to spur growth, we're spending dollars, and we would be doing it all, not just a portion.
And there is the chance that if you had a tenant that you'd start in 6 months.
Let me just say that yes.
Okay. So the 1 year is the latest according to this agreement.
As we've kind of, at the very beginning, it was, the 1 year was, kind of it had some wiggle room just because we never thought that the world was shut down with COVID, but look what happens.
No, I agree.
So that's why we put in that buffer. But with that being said is yes, given our national relationships and what we do and with a speculative development, this is the first step. This is what gets users comfortable that it is served.
I think we've gone over this quite long enough. I'm going to ask the clerk to please call roll.
Could somebody just repeat the motion? Sorry, I just have this blurry to me.
I believe the motion as that has been last presented and seconded is approval of resolution 2021-04, entering into the sewer development agreement with right-of-way dedication and easements to the city within 120 days.
Yes. That's my understanding. Okay,
So no-
would you please, we need to move on. I think there's been enough questions and comments. I think it's plenty clear what we're going to do here. Would the clerk please call roll?
Schreiber?
Yeah.
Yes.
Stites?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Cahar?
No.
Malat?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for showing up tonight.
Thank you very much.
Hated you to run through this, but that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Okay. City manager's report.
Get this up here so I can make sure everybody can hear. The only thing that I do have, and I will send this out to you in addition to what you have, I know we have been speaking about getting together for a kind of our council retreat work session that we haven't done one in a few years. And if you want to look this group up, but I'm going to probably recommend that we move forward with that really before we get into the budget process. So, I mean, there's some scheduling, but the group that I would propose using, it's called the Elim Group, ELIM. The president, owner of that group is a gentleman named Mike Conduff. Mike is actually a graduate of Pittsburgh State University, and early in his career was a city engineer, believe it or not, for the city of Pittsburgh, and then later became city manager in a number of cities, predominantly college cities. So you can imagine some of the work that you go on about governance and all of those kind of things. So I will send you more information out on that, and I'd like to get your feedback. And other than that, I will just stand for any questions if there are any, Mayor.
Thank you, Mike.
Do you have any proposed dates?
I don't have a proposed date now, but I mean, typically we have done this. I have spoken to Mr. Conduff. One of the things he does like to do is connect with each of the council members before the formal date. And he may also connect with some staff members. So normally he may do some one-on-ones, probably more via phone or Skype or some other way. But I would think we would probably be looking at either, at this point, probably no sooner than late April through May. Typically, we've done a Friday, Saturday. So kind of a half day Friday, Friday afternoon, or all day Friday and a half day Saturday. But we can work around those if there's a preference. But you really need I would say you need at least a day and a half so that you can, spend that time. But I would dedicate 2, but I mean, a day and a half is generally what we would do. We would find a location here and put all that together.
Okay, if you're done. Okay, now for council comments. Carolyn, you're first.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself real quick. Zach, I just wanted to ask if you could give us some details about the Parks and Rec chili pickup dinner and that event. I believe that deadline is quickly approaching to sign up.
Yeah, the sign up for that event ends tomorrow. It's $5 to sign up, and what you'll get is a helping of chili and a hot dog and a cinnamon roll and I believe a bottle of water. We've got 50 folks who've signed up so far, which kind of meets our minimum threshold to be able to provide meals for everybody over at the high-rise facility. I was going to send an email out tomorrow to council and staff, just asking folks for if you're available. We should have most of the cooking and logistical stuff all taken care of, but it's always nice to have a couple runners around, just helping out where needed. But that's this Friday from 5 to 7 at the community center, and it is a drive-through event. And it'll be the first of what we're hoping to be a continuing series of quarterly kind of community meals, hopefully before too long, be able to do them actually in person inside the community center.
Thank you, Zach. I appreciate that. I wanted to just do a quick follow-up on our Edwardsville mobile pantry event that we had Saturday. We were able to distribute over 13,000 pounds of food to over 400 people, including a local food pantry and our seniors at the high rise. Councilmember Shriver was there again with a lot of community volunteers. We just have some great volunteers and support there. It's a great event for our community. And so thank you all for your help and support on that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Margaret, you're next.
You always catch me off guard.
Oh, well, that's where I do it.
Right. So want to shout out to Carolyn because the Edwardsville Mobile Pantry would not exist, would not happen without the great leadership and organization and hours and work that Carolyn puts into that, because I know I've given money here and there, and I've given some canned food donations here and there, but to go out and month after month and feed over 400 people, over 200 or 300 families, that's above and beyond. So Carolyn, I can't thank you enough for organizing that, because there still is a great need out there. A lot of people have kind of gotten back on their feet, but there still is a great need. So can't thank you enough for that. I'm proud of Edwardsville. And glad to see the continuing work on the 98th Street progress. Glad to see that's still going forward. I think a lot of residents will be happy about that as well. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Garrett, you're next.
I have nothing.
Thank you. Chuck Adams, you're next.
Just a couple things. One is, Dusty, thank you for the phone call, updating the North Enders. I assume everybody else got a phone call like I did. I appreciate it. It was communicated very well. All we can deal with is what we have, but I do appreciate the communication was done very, very well. And Carolyn, I also thank you for your work on the pantry and representing Edwardsville so well for those in need. That's all I have.
Thank you. Chuck Stites, you're last.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I think that the discussion that we had regarding the sewers is very important. I think however long it takes, that's how long it takes. It's important to where we go. It affects all of our citizens of Edwardsville. And so I'm glad that we had good communication and tried to vet this out the best that we possibly could. And that's all.
Thank you. Chuck Adams asked for another comment, so go ahead, Chuck.
Yes, regarding the city or the town center development, and I think it'd be good to have a workshop to go through and get everybody on the same page, or at least get everybody all the ideas on the table and the questions and so forth. And could we have one maybe this Wednesday or Thursday, 6 o'clock in the evening or 5 o'clock, whatever anybody says?
What is your
Tell me,
availability?
we'll make it work. It would be a public meeting, so we need to just give notice. And
Okay,
so,
let's shoot for Thursday then.
Will Thursday work?
To the rest of the council, those not present, would Thursday be amenable for a work session on the town center?
Yes.
I could do that.
Okay,
we'll set up, we'll probably just do as a, we'll just set it up as a work session. I think we may use just the training room, but we'll let you know for sure.
okay, very good.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, I really don't have anything further to add. I'm going to agree with Chuck Stites. We had a lot of good dialogue. I think we understand, all of us seem to understand where we're going, and hopefully we're going in the right direction, because we sure want to see something moving. So with that, we are adjourned.